Welcome to our Going Green podcast, and today we're going to ask the question, where has Tornado Alley gone?
Or how I like to call the phrase, where has all the tornadoes gone? In that lovely
Yeah,
1960s song.
unfortunately, it's not long time passing, yeah? And we've seen a lot of tornado this week, devastating sort of Kentucky, which isn't part of the Tornado Alley. And the story behind sort of this word Tornado Alley was sort of in the late 1800s. There was a famous geologist and explorer called John Wesley Powell. And when he was looking at America, he found there was this sort of clear longitudinal dividing line between two parts of America. There was the sort of arid one side
Yeah.
and the sort of more sort of
Humid? Yeah.
more humid, some more temperate sort of other side. So the Western Plains, very sort of dry and arid, and there was this really sharp climate boundary. And he called this the 100th meridian, which is where it was based, roughly on the 100th meridian.
Yeah. And basically it's a line that exists approximately in Oklahoma and through part of Texas. It's more one side of Texas. Just because how big Texas is, but effectively it's very much in the middle of the America, and it's effectively,
And that's where historically tornadoes have generally been. They do go outside this area. They're not following exactly the 100th parallel, but they basically they go along this sort of rough line.
and
They've been doing that for many years.
Yeah, and the reason they're doing it is very simple, is the weather conditions that the America or North America causes. You've got the dry, arid heat from the west. You've got the wet, I say cold, but it's the sea from the Gulf going in, and then you've got the cold coming down from the north. So you've got basically these three zones of different weather conditions, and that is the prime place for storms and things to generate.
Yeah,
Okay?
large tornadoes.
And effectively the reason they get pushed up Tornado Alley is because the jet stream has generally dived down under California and then up the 100th meridian and then down the east coast. So that's why they propel upwards, because the jet streams, which is the high,
And it's powering it basically. It powers the storms.
just powers it and moves it up. That's how it works.
But unfortunately,
as you know, there's the recent tornado that hit Kentucky. Although not just in Kentucky, it was in 6 other states.
Yeah.
All reported damage and problems. But the reason in the relation of why Kentucky was hit so badly, when was the last recorded tornado in Kentucky apart from this one that's just hit?
And I did some thinking about this, and I thought probably about the 1960s. And you said to me, oh no, much longer than that.
The last recorded one I can find is from 1949.
And that's a long time to sort of, it shows that they're not very common, but this tornado was a major tornado.
It produced what? 6, and the storm produced 6 separate tornadoes or something horrific like that. Fantastic reason why not to be in America, because don't have to afford these tornadoes.
I was reading that some piece of paper or book was found 183 miles away.
You said it was a photo, or the news said it was something.
It was something like that. Yeah, it was a piece of paper with some date or whatever on it, and it had travelled 183 miles in this wind, which is sort of an absolute phenomenal distance. You expect things to be blown perhaps a few feet or even half a mile.
Yeah, that was just So obviously devastating. We're not implying the fact of how strong it was. But of course, Kentucky is nowhere near Tornado Alley.
No, it's somewhere on about, I think, well, I'm trying to remember. It was something sort of like on the 98th meridian.
Something like that, isn't it?
So it's sort of, and it's even further over. I think it's even further over than that. And we're seeing this Tornado Alley. Well, you might as well forget having Tornado Alley because it's gone. Because now the tornadoes are going much more
Eastward?
Yes, definitely eastward. And it's now at least on the 98th meridian and probably moving still more and more. That's where this sharp climate boundary is. And in Kentucky's even further over than that.
But the reason I was reading about people trying to explain how the tornado happened is because, as I said, the jet stream goes up and down the US and it's very small. I wouldn't say tightly bound, but the sort of it dives down sharply and up, but the distance between the up and down band of the thing is very small. So effectively, you're thinking very much up and down, so down, up, down, up, down, up.
Yeah.
And
that does move. It doesn't just stay in a static position. It does move across.
Yeah. But what we found at the time of the tornado wasn't this up, down, nice pattern. It was very sort of shallow in regards to actually the jet stream didn't sort of go down California. It came 90 degrees to California.
Yeah, it was much more.
And then went up, towards Canada, which is why the trajectory of the tornado was very much eastward, which led to obviously all the conditions.
Yeah. So we're seeing, probably almost certainly due to climate change, we're seeing basically climate and weather patterns actually moving. So in America, we're seeing now this Tornado Alley completely gone, and this, instead of this 100th sort of meridian sort of being the important thing, it's now further over the divide between east and west. And it's not just that that's happened. We're also seeing somewhere like the Sahara Desert. Do you know it's grown by 10% in the last 30 years?
And we were asking this silly question of, is it growing more upwards, north, southwards, which way? And the honest answer is the area has actually increased. So it's expanded
in all directions.
In all directions. So so it's expanded down and into the, I don't know what it's called. It's like, not the jungle. That's the wrong place.
That's too low. But that's you're talking about more the tropical rainforest there. Yeah, and they're above there because that's the way that sort of weather works. You get the sort of the tropics, well, not necessarily the tropics, the equator, it heats up and the air rises and it sort of makes cycles and circles and patterns going round. And it then sort of leaves another one where it's sort of very dry and arid. And that is sort of where we find the Sahara Desert.
Yes, it's where.
And then there's a northerly one above the sort of.
Yeah, so tropics, effectively, it's a line is the equator, and is it the something in Capricorn?
Oh yes, Cancer and Capricorn.
Cancer and Capricorn, those are the boundaries of the equator. But effectively, northern winds go up, and southern winds go down from those two. But from the equator, that's where they go.
Best to watch the Met Office for this. They do a very good one on this.
Much better than us. But essentially...
Well, we're not weather experts.
Is it raining outside? Am I wetting out? That's as far as I go. But the bands of which we would call the capes of... Not the capes of Cancer and Capricorn.
Tropics.
That's it. There you go. See, I know some things, right?
Yeah.
Those are slowly, because of climate, or more precisely, the warming of the climate, those two bands are now increasing or more precisely, they're moving north and south at I wouldn't say unprecedented rates, because we didn't realize they moved until very recently.
But basically, yeah, in the last few years, we've seen an awful lot of movement of these things. Basically, the last 20, even 30 years.
Yeah.
Often we haven't noticed they've been moving for sort of 10 years, and then people say, oh, look, this has moved. And especially now when we've got more satellites going up and studying sort of not just weather patterns, but climate patterns.
Yes, didn't NASA say they were doing a new satellite program or new mission to actually study climate directly?
Yeah, they're going to look at the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere with this satellite, and they're going to start having a look at basically what is caused by humans. And it's fairly obvious, actually, nearly all of it's caused by us. There are other bits and pieces that cause things, like we've got several volcanoes having a good go at the moment. And these volcanoes, yes, they do actually spew out a lot of carbon dioxide. But if you look over places like Europe, you'll see there not many volcanoes over northern Europe, but there's an awful lot of CO2, and it seems to come more from sort of power stations
Yeah.
and cities.
And yes, it's one of those things. So yeah, so you've got all those things, the driving the climate. We know this, we've seen it. It's now we need to make a difference, because of course, upon the hearing all this news of how much things are warming up, we're hearing how only what was a couple of years ago, the largest I say iceberg, that's the wrong way to describe it.
Ice sheet,
Ice
isn't it?
sheet.
Thwaites Glacier.
I don't think it was. I think it's one of
Oh,
those.
you're talking about one that's actually
It's called like A2 or something
Yeah.
daft. Basically, it's sort of disconnected from disconnected is the correct word, because it's this huge thing from Antarctica, and is basically now floating in the southern ocean, slowly melting, of course.
Yeah.
And it's a major. What was it? It's the size of not the Isle of Wight, but it's very
It's quite big, yeah.
huge.
But there's a bigger one. There is Thwaites Glacier. That's the size of Great Britain. And that makes a sort of a great big river of ice coming sort of out. And that is melting. And when this melts properly, fully, we've got enough water about the size of Great Britain that's going to be dumped into the sea. And that's going to cause a little rise in the whole of the oceans.
Yeah, the sea level rise is estimated from this glacial runoff, or this melting of this glacier, is set to be sort of, if it's all gone, this is just one day, an estimated something like 3 meters worth of water or sea level rise across the globe. It doesn't sound that much, but it's huge in relation to this trying to.
Yeah, it's an enormous sort of amount, that's it's going to cause, really severe problems. And sort of people have to sort of accept that, these things are going to happen. So, we've had big warnings about this, and they're talking about this sea rise to happen, in the next 10 years?
It was something in the next, I know it's in the next decade, whether or not that's
10 years, Paul.
I know that's 10 years, yeah.
Yeah. And that's going to sort of, basically, the ice is going to sort of melt, and we've got warm ocean currents that are going to sort of move this underwater mountain, and they've already got massive fractures in it growing across that ice sheet, and it won't be long before basically it arrives in the UK.
Well, yeah,
And it's going to arrive in the UK simply because the water level is going to rise, the water level rises, and the UK becomes slightly smaller.
yes, yes.
Now, the good news is, Paul, that we live 400 meters above sea level.
Yes.
And I've been doing some calculations that if we got rid of all the ice everywhere, we're still okay.
Well, that's good. But
Thousands and millions of other people have drowned, but we're okay. We're at 400 meters. So
well, it's like places you hear places sort of like Bangladesh, how much a little bit of they're dealing with the sea level rise at the minute, the current sea level rise, and I can't remember. It's something daft like half a meter.
Yeah, and it's coming, and it's increasing and increasing at the moment. Now, this Thwaites Glacier was about 4% of the global sea level rise. So now that's going to be double what we've already had.
I know it's a horrific.
And that's your 60 centimetre rise. You said half a metre, but yeah, 60 centimetres, slightly more. And that's sort of frightening. And if you pop up to the Arctic...
Yeah.
Yeah, I looked at what our record temperature was in the UK, and sort of we do well if we get to sort of 30, and occasionally we bob up to sort of a little bit higher, and someone will no doubt tell me what the record is for the UK, but generally we get a few days of 30 every year. We sort of get up to that.
Yeah.
But in the Arctic, they got up to 38.
Yes.
They were warmer than the UK. I was thinking of taking my holiday in sort of Siberia because it was warmer than the UK.
Yeah, Siberia's meant to be cold, right? Right? No. Or at least not anymore.
Well, it is in the winter. It can get really cold in the winter. It can be some of the coldest places on Earth around there. Vladivostok, I have a feeling, is sort of pretty chilly.
But apparently quite warm.
But other places, yeah, it has been really quite warm, sort of, and connected to that of all those sort of fires that have gone. And that's affecting those high temperatures, heating the surface ground. That means the permafrost
is melting.
Starts to melt.
Yeah.
And there's an awful lot of water in that permafrost. And worse, there's an awful lot of other things in that permafrost that comes out. And by that, I mean methane, and as well as carbon dioxide. And the methane there is, our favourite sort of greenhouse gas, because this one is sort of much worse than the carbon dioxide, and a little bit of methane causes, as we've talked about many times before, a lot more damage.
40 times the equivalent, 40 times 1 unit of methane is sort of like the equivalent of 40 times the CO2 equivalent.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's hard to say. We're seeing this our climate slowly not destroying but changing, and unfortunately we're seeing lots of things not adapt to it. And we're struggling to adapt to it, and we've got all the fancy.
But it's the animals that aren't going to adapt. And the animals are going to have a real problem, because animals can adapt to slow changes in the environment. And generally you see sort of animals evolving, and they can't evolve that quick. Now, we are seeing some things that evolve that quick. At the moment, we're seeing the coronavirus. This can evolve that quick. Bacteria can evolve quite quick. But animals, they take thousands and thousands of years to do this. And when we've had other changes, they have taken place over thousands of years. But when they happen quickly, we get something else occur.
Yeah, I think it's called extinction.
Extinction events, yes. And we know of sort of about 5 so far. And generally, when you look at these extinction events, when I've talked to my students, they say, oh, yes, well, this was due to sort of an asteroid hitting the Earth. And the answer is, Well, yes, it was,
Well, one of them was.
but no, it wasn't, because the dinosaurs were already on their last legs,
Yes, I know.
and that was because of climate change. And you get things like sea levels rising. Sea levels rising, this makes water surprisingly deeper. Now, that has a knock-on effect that plants that were growing in this nice little lagoon and sitting there quite happily, getting lots of sunshine, now aren't getting enough sunshine, so they
Mhm.
die out. There's less plants. That means the fish population crash, and that therefore means that other populations that
Rely on
rely
that.
on that basically also crash. And that's what we saw with these sort of dinosaurs. They were having a big problem with these extinction events. And looking at the fossil records on these extinction events, we've seen something like up to about 90 or more percent of all life being wiped out.
Yes.
And that looks like it's coming soon to a place near you. Fortunately, I have to say that I've got this white stuff here, and lack of hair, and that's suggesting to me that I'm slightly older than you, who seem to have a little bit more hair, although going grey, I noticed. Yeah, right, okay. And I probably won't be around to see all this.
No.
Now, I'd like to say that I'm going to live a long time, and I'm going to live sort of, I know, 2, 3, 400.
Well, we could always
Um,
cryogenically freeze you like Walt Disney.
oh no, thanks. Uh, but it's not going to affect me so much. But my children, that's you, uh, probably still won't see too much. But your children, if you manage to find a girlfriend, and that was a hint, by the way. He's looking. He's in the market. Your children's children, and on from there, for them, they may well start to see this extinction event really happen, and they'll talk to their granddad. That'll be you, and you'll say, "Yeah, I remember those days when we had," and you'll quote some
I was,
sort
I,
of weird animal like sheep and cows, and
I was going to say, I remember the days of snow days, happening, cancelling school, I suppose. We don't get snow anymore,
we,
never
we,
snowed.
we do here. We do get snow, yeah, sort of about sort of a sprinkle,
But
isn't it?
not if it gets any warmer.
No.
That was the point of making was, these generations will ask, you know, do you remember snow days? We've got films of them. Sort of like I remember snow days. Well, they've never had a snow day. It's the
Yeah.
same thing. But this is the point of which it's being trying to made is we're trying to solve or fix our climate, not for us as in today, but it's for us tomorrow. And
Us, you mean as in
a
humankind?
species, yes, a species as opposed to me particularly. Uh, but but the problem is, you see, everybody doesn't. You can't look. I thought we're really bad. Humans are really bad at looking at that far ahead. Planning sort of in 3 generations. It's sort of like I
But
can't even cope with tomorrow, let alone.
but that's what we've seen at COP26. We see that with governments. They can see the long-term picture, yes, but we still need all our coal. We need this. We need this. Oh no, we're not going to do that now. No, we need to worry about now, and that climate change. Oh, that's still way in the future. Well, I'm sorry, but way in the future is now probably just a few years away.
Mm-hmm.
And these countries that sort of stick their sort of head in the sand and just say, well, it's not my problem, or worse, it's your problem. Uh, yeah, we do see some countries saying, well, yeah, you made all this problem, you pay for it. Well, we also see the other one where, well, you put a lot of stuff into the atmosphere, so now it's our turn.
Yeah. You know,
And it's an attitude we can't really take. We've got to all sort of work together. We've got to say, okay, this is the problem. We've got to try and solve this together.
yeah. Well, that's what the cops are for, and that's what we're trying to do is as a
Yeah.
international community. But
We've seen from the stuff that was happening this week, we've seen that Tornado Alley is no more. We've seen the tornadoes are now moved. And I know I heard President Biden say, this is sort of, a once in a lifetime sort of thing. This is one of the first tornadoes of the season, and this was a big one. Does it possibly bode that we're going to get more tornadoes?
Or they're going to get more tornadoes,
And they're going to be bigger? I have
knows?
to say that UK also get tornadoes. We haven't had one for a long time, but we did have a different depression. We had Storm Arwen came down,
Yeah.
and that caused major problems. In fact,
Still.
still causing problems because people were without power for a couple of weeks.
Oh,
And then the next one came along, and just slightly different direction, but still Scotland got sort of hit by it. And it's basically, we need better infrastructure. We've got to build up to the fact that this idea that we are going to get more storms. They are going to get more fierce. We are going to have more rain. We are going to have more floods. And we've got to put our money in to sort of do something about that now. The UK government's actually not too bad at doing that. I will be honest. I think they've actually done quite a good job of trying to sort of invest in some of these things.
Yes.
But it's still not enough.
It's yeah. This is the one of the criticals. We the UK has done a lot, much more than other places, but that's still not enough. They were estimating what is sort of like the estimated costs for these climate crisis and problems and pros is something like sort of $8 billion or something horrific, and we've only invested barely billions into it. Yes, that's a problem, but there is this massive problem of mitigation over. It's mitigating over something. I can't remember. But essentially, if you prevent these things happening, you don't then have to fork out and pay for the damages.
So we started off with a question, which is, where have the tornadoes gone? And they haven't gone basically away. They've just moved. And the places that did have tornadoes sort of, well, we know there are tornadoes. We're organized. We expect tornadoes. We've got mitigation in place. Now tornadoes are going elsewhere. And those places don't have that mitigation. They don't have the sirens. They don't necessarily have all the tornado shelters. And as the water levels rise, have we got suitable flood defences and barriers? And as it gets warmer, are we going to get more rain? And are we going to sort of cope with our bridges being sort of not washed away and floods taking place in famous towns in England like Worcester, where my sister goes and surprisingly gives messages like, arrived Worcester, flooded, returning home.
Yes.
This has been our Going Green podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week for our one just before Christmas. And so until then, it's goodbye from me and
A goodbye from me.
take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.